morning, everyone. I am just allowing for a few minutes for all our attendees to be admitted, and then we'll start. And for those of you that have just joined, I'm just allowing a few minutes for all of our attendees to join, and then we'll kick off the webinar. See, we've got some nice activity in the chat going. I'll just give one more minute just for all the attendees to be admitted, and then we'll kick off. Right. And I think we can start off so long while the rest of our attendees are admitted. Good morning, a warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I will be your webinar host today. I am Clara Wicht, and I currently head up Talviva's product and marketing department. As we know, customer experience, also referred to as CX, it's not a new word. Everyone is talking about it. But it is a domain that holds immense power in shaping the success of any organization. In today's competitive marketplace, customers have more choices than ever, and they're quick to abandon a brand that do not provide a great experience. We all work hard to win a customer, to build a relationship, and you want to retain that customer. And thus, providing a good CX is the golden thread through this relationship, ensuring that every interaction leaves a lasting positive impression. In this webinar today, we are going to talk about all things CX. We'll delve into topics like learning why capturing the voice of the customer is vital, gathering insights from your customers. We'll look at the practical part of CX, so how to move from strategy to execution. And then lastly, we'll also share a few best practices and common pitfalls to be aware of. Right, so just before we get started, just a few house rules. This webinar is scheduled for an hour, where 40 minutes will consist of structured speaking covered by each of our three speakers. And this will also include some discussion points between our panel. We'll then end off by taking a few questions from the audience, so please feel free to ask any questions in the webinar chat channel, and these will be discussed at the end of the webinar. Right, so on that note, I would like to introduce you to our panel for today. Martie de Beer is currently serving as the executive for contact centers at Talviva, and her responsibilities span from setting divisional business objectives to enhancing Talviva's service leadership within the contact center business unit. Martie exemplifies a blend of technical proficiency and leadership acumen. And throughout her career, she has consistently championed the development and implementation of strategic business plans, process design, customer digital enablement, sales targets, and customer relationship management. Also forming part of our panel today is Lindy Brogneri. She's the operational specialist at Payfast and the catalyst behind every good idea that enables the team to work smarter, not harder. Leveraging her diverse experience across a range of people-centric industries, such as sales, hospitality, and fintech, Lindy approaches business operations with practice insight into exactly what makes a person tick. In her current capacity as head of operations at PayFast, Lindy is responsible for optimizing the merchant experience. And then our keynote speaker today is Michelle Badenhorst. Michelle is a certified CX practitioner at Immersion Group and also the co-author of 2 best-selling CX books. She is an industry force with many years of hands-on experience in CX, as well as design and systems thinking. She is also a professional coach, and she's passionate about building successful and confident CX professionals and business leaders. Michelle, without any further delay, I would like to hand over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Awesome. Let me just start by sharing my screen. Here we go. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Great stuff. So let's start. So I want to start by sharing a little bit about myself. So in addition to being a very successful CX professional, I'm also a very dedicated wife and a mother. I've got a beautiful adult daughter who is already engaged. And then that beautiful view that you see there, that's often, very often, my sunsets. So myself and my husband are very fortunate. We managed to move to a farm in the Klein Karoo near Oudtshoorn about 2 years ago. And yeah, so other than being a professional, I also try to be a farmer when I have time. And yes, you'll see we have animals, and we had at some stage small springbok. Yes, we absolutely love springbok. So that was actually one of our goal or our dreams was to have a small piece of land where we will have our own springbok. So yeah, I'm really very fortunate. I have managed to work remotely from here on the farm for more than 2 years now, and I wouldn't want it any other way. We really enjoy it here. So in terms of the Immersion Group, the company that I consult with or that I'm associated with, they really a force to be reckoned with in terms of creating digital experiences. And in terms of what they focus on is if we think of experiences, we define it in terms of 3 large value propositions. There's a design element where you do the actual design, and then there's the engineering. That's where you have to bring it to life. And then there's the growth in terms of experience. So that speaks about your training, your capabilities, and making sure that your people are performing optimally. And really, if we think about value capabilities, there's really a research and then a design and a digital. The digital is more the delivery element, and then delivery in terms of PM and program management. So that's really their core offering. And I've been very fortunate to be part of their team for over 3 years. So my biggest frustration as a customer experience professional has probably been companies, or what I've experienced is the ability to execute on the customer experience strategy. Too many times myself, and I suspect that a lot of you, end up seeing our hard work on a PowerPoint deck somewhere in someone's SharePoint drive. And when I thought about that, and I just related back to my last 2 or 3 years, it felt like I could really summarize the reasons for that as the following. So there's really, when I looked at it, it's really because people don't understand CX throughout the organization. There's different interpretations of customer experience. And then what we've often seen is that the value of the measurements, how we actually value CX and measure CX, people I want to say, mistrusting of that. And then there's this CX hyperactivity, and this is where everyone is doing something in the organization, and they think they're actually doing CX, even though they're just busy doing business as usual. So everyone is busy doing something, but there's no structure around it. And then, of course, a big one that you're probably very familiar with is conflicting priorities. And often those conflicting priorities will result in a compromise on the customer experience or the user experience. And then a big one that we've seen is the shortage of skilled, experienced resources. And probably the biggest pet hate is the prioritization of technology decisions before we've actually understand what's the experience intent. So those are really the three core things that I've experienced to be real limitations, or in terms of taking the CX strategy to execution. And if I think about the root cause of that, and I think about what sits behind that, it's probably an immature customer experience operating model. So if you think of a customer experience operating model, it sets the structure of how we work, when we work, who do we report in, our people, and things like that. So it's really, and I haven't seen many companies actually considering the CX operating model, the CX function as an in terms of an operating model. And then the other root cause is the level of the CX maturity in the organization. So oftentimes it's probably at an emerging or a developing stage, and it's not at a full matured level. And that could also be the reason why you would experience some of these frustrations. And then looking back in terms of what's the impact, and the impact of these things is really that the impact is that oftentimes that the visibility and accountability of CX is not driven from C-suite. We see that oftentimes there's a lot of talk about CX, but it's not really driven from a CX from a C-suite level. And then the other reason is how we structure the function in terms of, is it centralized or decentralized, or the type of model that we have. And then another big thing is that the design practices often sit in different business areas. So we've experienced it in the past that although we want to try and work together as one team, we found that our team members actually sit in different areas of the business. They were scattered, and of course that would have a direct influence as well. We spoke about that. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. It's a limited experience of the limited and the varied skills of our designers. So even though we had designers, oftentimes we see that the designers more from other areas like business analysis. That's typically a good one, or from customer service. So as a result of that transition into the role, we often see that there's various levels of experience in our teams. And we spoke about the developing structure, and the fact that because it's a developing structure, we found that the activities across the organization wasn't coordinated centrally. So it was very difficult for us to get a consistent view of, and even contributing towards a consistent delivery of experience. When there's no formal government structure in place, the governance is in terms of our mandate, in terms of what is our role, when it's not communicated throughout the organization as well. And then another outcome of all of this is an immature design system and limited design assets. So when we don't, especially if your data and your governance isn't at a mature level, you'll find that there's big gaps in terms of your design systems, and then probably your design assets as well. And then last but not least is a big thing here is often the service design capability is immature in organizations. So we have a capability where we can design the journeys, we can design the experiences, we can imagine what it looks like, but then it's very difficult for us to actually create a view for the business in terms of that service design layer is. And for me, the service design layer is where it really starts to bring the story together, because that translates into our execution plan. Okay, so if I really just summarize it then. So for me, the CX function, I've often seen that the CX function is treated more as a tactical process improvement capability rather than a strategic partner in the organization. So where we should actually be working with the senior leaders to develop and communicate and execute the organizational experience intent. And then a big one then is the technology is often a driver of our experiences and not necessarily the customer delight, which result in unnecessary design debt. So we've really, most of you probably are facing this challenge today, and yeah, that's probably one of our biggest things that we need to consider. So in terms of a operating model, what we've done is we started by saying we wanted to measure the maturity of our operating model, and we've just picked a strategic maturity model to evaluate it, and we found that our operating model was more at the developing stage. And what we've said is, we said in terms of moving across from a developing to an optimized model, what are some of the key initiatives or key things that we need to do? So I'm not going to go into too much detail about all of that, but yeah. So but what is important is in terms of I actually want to speak about just the structure. In terms of the structure, it's important that you get buy-in from your C-suite to envision and communicate the desired and the aspirational experience intent across the business. Without that, you'll probably find that you're not going to get where you need to be in terms of moving from that tactical place to a more strategic place. In terms of the people and the talent, there the focus should really be around acquiring highly skilled CX specialists that can help you translate your business strategy into different experiences, and being able to really design from both a macro and a micro level. And that's probably also a big challenge for organizations. And then in terms of the governance and the power there, I just want to highlight that it's important for you to actually agree with the business in terms of how you measure CX. So you need to get buy-in in terms of the metrics, and everyone needs to contribute and collaborate and contribute towards the development of your maturity of your CX metrics, so you have a mature measurement. And then defining and socializing your processes, your use cases, and your engagement model. So there's important to really share with the organization a view in terms of how you work and how do you engage with them. And then in terms of data and systems, I want to mention that the biggest challenge there is probably to have a secure data repository where you can then manage your design systems. Now it's become easier with tools like Figma and things like that. But I personally still struggle when it comes to journey management. I know that there's a lot of tools around managing journeys, but personally, I haven't found one that I would really promote in terms of my favorite. So there, even now, we still have challenges there. But yeah, and then I've mentioned the design system. So when you have a mature design tool, it also becomes easier to make sure that you can mature your design system, and that you can continuously review and update your design system. In terms of CX, the structure and function, I just want to mention a few things that we've successfully managed then to implement, and what we really found that helped. In terms of the structure and the function, there it's important to look at your operating model, and there's different models. There's a centralized, there's a decentralized, there's a hybrid, there's a blended model. So we've adopted a hybrid model, where we said in terms of the hybrid model is we want a centralized like a center of excellence where we can manage the costs and the governance and the enablement of all CX projects, and then a decentralized solution design mechanism. So that could be something, I mean, it could be like the agile trains, but yeah, there's different options then in terms of doing that. And that really worked well for us, because we had resources at a central level that can then communicate and then can also sit in terms of that then sits across the delivery mechanism as well, but there's a close connection. And then in terms of resources, like I mentioned, some of our functions, resources sits in different functions. We had some of our resources sat in sales, and some of them sat in IT. So what we've managed to then successfully do is to move them all into a central experience design function, reported into an executive head for customer experience strategies. That also helped us to set ourselves up and to align, and to make sure that there's alignment in terms of execution. And the other thing is, like I said, our actual function was previously in a more business sales type of function. So if you think of where CX sits in the organization, we've recently moved into a more corporate function, and that also makes a lot of sense, because when you're in a corporate function, you can prioritize better. When you're in a specific area, like for instance sales and business, you'll find that will inform your priorities. So sitting more at a corporate level, you could really benefit from that, because then you can have meaningful conversations across all the business areas. And then a very, very important one is of agreeing on your design mandate. So it's really important that you agree in terms of what is your mandate, in terms of what level of design. If I say what level of design, if there's no overarching strategy that sits and are owned by the CX function, it's very difficult to actually escalate it down into lower level experience, like your micro experiences. So that mandate needs to be set at an executive level, and it needs to be communicated and socialized so that it can cascade down into your delivery teams. Yeah, and very important, like I said, the engagement model. So the engagement model is everyone in the organization needs to understand how you work. Everyone in the organization needs to know that you need to have a view of your book of work, for instance. So these are important things in terms of setting the standard, setting the way of work, and agreeing that, especially with your delivery teams. It's very, very important to have those conversations and the alignments in your delivery teams. Okay, and in terms of the vision and the strategy, it's important. I mean, everyone could probably will acknowledge this. When we started, we've actually felt that we had like a developing strategy as well. And the reason why we said we had a developing strategy is because it was there, but it wasn't socialized. We weren't really executing towards it. We couldn't show value in terms of the strategy. So we really felt like when we looked at our CX strategy, that we were there. And then again, in terms of optimizing that, we started and we've identified some key actions for us to move us across. And really what's really most important is to start by saying, what is that aspirational view for us as an organization. So we really need to you really need to do work in terms of the strategy, making sure that the strategy is solid, making sure you have a plan in place to move from let's say developing to an optimized. And important there is socializing, getting buy-in, communicating the strategy, and then of course your macro strategy then needs to start informing your other levels of engagements. So in terms of the strategy, just what we found that worked is I've mentioned the macro. So what we said is we went through a series of discovery and design phases. And as part of the discovery and the design phases, there was immersions, there was insights. We sat with the business to get their pain points. Those were translated, the business perspective, that was translated into actual pain points. And then together with the business, we actually co-created and refined our macro experience North Star or aspiration. So a good practice is to start there and to say at a very macro level, what is that thing? What is that experience intent? What is that promise to our clients? And then once you have that macro experience North Star, you can start unpacking that into your micro experiences. The micro experiences is wonderful. It's good. I often find that they remain only in a PowerPoint deck. But where the value of the strategy comes, the macro strategy, is when you start breaking it down into your service blueprint. I spoke about the service design earlier and the lack of that capability. So that the service design blueprint and the capability heat map is where you really start engaging with your business. You can start and say, this is the capabilities that we need. These capabilities, this is the gap that we have in terms of capabilities. This is where it really can start creating meaningful conversations for the organization in terms of your future state. Now, I said one of the challenges that I said earlier is oftentimes, I want to say the service blueprint, but not necessarily the technical decision, that technical landscape, those decisions has already been made. So the challenge is then to, I don't want to say retrospect or retrofit your experience, but that's where you need to start then refine your macro strategy so that it can really then, so that it can accommodate those decisions that's already been made. And that's where it often becomes a two-way conversation and a little bit of give and take in terms of what do we need to give up in terms of the experience so that we can accommodate those decisions that's already been made in terms of technology. But the service blueprint for me is probably the most important thing, and the most important next step after the strategy was defined. And then, of course, your experience roadmap. So the moment you've done that piece of work, you can then sit with the business and you can say, collectively, let's agree in terms of our priorities. What do we want to see for Horizon 1, 2, and 3? What does that look like? What must we prioritize? What must we do? What can we do? What should we be doing? Have that conversation so that can then ultimately translate into an experience roadmap. So for me, this is one of my famous quotes: the best way to control your customer experience is to be intentional about it. You need to intentionally sit with your business, define, think through, brainstorm what it could potentially look like. And the only way to move from random, because that's often what we experience, from random to intentional experience, is to elicit actual customer feedback and customer insights. So if you don't build your experience intent on that, it's probably going to be, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. You really provided valuable input. And I think, on that last slide you had there, the quote that really resonates with me is to really become customer obsessed and customer centric. We must obtain customer feedback, and that will ultimately guide us on this journey. And I think at this point, this is a good segue into our panel discussion. So Lindy, I would love to hear from you. What does a solid customer feedback strategy involve? And how can you use customer feedback to drive meaningful change in the organization?
This is something that's extremely important to us at Payfast. We've implemented surveys on all our tickets, live chats, and phone calls. We really take these to heart, read through them. As soon as we get a bad negative feedback, it will be escalated to a manager who will reach out to the customer and will immediately try and find resolution. We've also started implementing small breakfast sessions at our offices so that we can have face-to-face engagement with our customers. They can meet the team, and we can really just encourage an open conversation about where their pain points are and how we can support them better as a business and just meet their service needs. And it's very insightful that often this is something that we overthink. We want to give all the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, our customers want the basics. Have you met SLA? Do you actually understand my problem? And do you have a solve for it? Can you actually solve my query? Once you've got those covered and you understand those, from there you can add on all the nice to haves and take it to the next level.
Thank you. And I think, the breakfast session is one example, a practical way to obtain customer feedback and then drive change from there. So that's wonderful. And I think to that point, it's important to remember that technology is not the customer experience, but it does play an important role in enabling a good customer experience. And on that note, Marty, where would you say is a good place to start?
Yeah, thanks, Clara. And I think, in today's digital age, interoperability is pivotal, for creating that seamless experiences and, in this integrated ecosystem, as diverse systems and applications and CRM platforms are multiplying, the need for them to really speak to each other, becomes paramount. I think the best way maybe to think of interoperability is that it's the universal translator, it bridges the gap, and it really ensures that, there's harmony between, the customer's digital experiences. If we think about, it's not just about the systems working together, it's really about, how do we optimize the user experiences? Whether someone, begins a task on their laptop and then, continues on their phone, that data flow, it needs to be effortless between, your ERP systems and your CRM systems. And interoperability, really is that linchpin, to ensure that that customer experience remains consistent. And, with today, I mean, look with the surge of APIs, the multitude of communication channels, automation capabilities, there's just not, we're no longer just talking about just integration, right? We're talking about, this orchestration of a symphony of, multiple digital interactions. So I think if we look at, interoperability, it really is that enabler, right? So interoperability helps, organizations really gather data from multiple touch points, from your CRM systems and your ERP solutions, that really creates that 360-degree view, of the customer. And ultimately, if we think about it, that leads to, more personalized and, efficient service, but it also enables, businesses to have that, that full history, that rich context of all customer engagement. So as we venture, further into this, I want to say interconnected era almost, apologies. Interoperability, just isn't a technical term anymore. It's really the foundation, of our digital future that enables businesses to be more agile, our users to have richer experiences, in this vast and digital landscape. So I think, there's always this gap. Go for it, Claire.
Apologies. No, I wanted to say something.
That's fine.
Sorry, Marty. In terms of the original question, in terms of technology is not the experience, I just want to highlight it again. We are often in situations where those technical decisions has already been made. Everyone is going platform. We know that's our realities. But I just want to leave a thought with the audience. A very good practice is to identify and design debt that was resulted as a result of those decisions, and to keep the organization accountable. So what we've started doing is we started creating a design debt register where the business needs to either accept or migrate or mitigate, and then if they mitigate, we need to collectively agree. So the business needs to agree in terms of what are the actions that we need to take in terms of dealing with that design debt. Yeah, so we have to become the voice of reason, and make sure that we speak up, so that we can ultimately see what is the impact of those decisions that we've made. So sorry, Marty, I just wanted to share that thought.
No, that's a wonderful insight. Thanks, Michelle. And I think, if we look at just some of the pillars of the gaps that we're also seeing, with the technology space, there's a multitude of, ways on how we can bridge those gaps. But if we look at there's four ones that really stand out for me, and it's data synchronization. So, having access, to real-time data and sharing the data and the customer interactions on one platform immediately, and also having others, have access to that data is as important, to create, which is the second dimension of personalization. There's no point, in having access to data, but nothing really speaks to one another, and you kind of lose the context of it. So the second dimension, for me is that personalization across the platforms, and that systems can really start sharing data harmoniously within the business environment. That ultimately, if you think about it, just creates that unified communications section. Whether a customer, sends an email or uses chatbot or, reaches out to you on social media. Like I said, the interoperability section of it really ensures that brand then has that 360-degree view, of all the interactions with that customer. And then I think lastly, it really speaks to also then efficiency and speed gains, right? So if we have people, that have bought in, then we've got everyone on board, and our systems and solutions and people are on board, that integrated systems and communications, ultimately it leads to reducing wait times for our customers. It's whether they want to, ask a question about a product or availability of a product, once this ecosystem is really integrated, it helps us, just to ultimately deliver a great customer experience.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks, Michelle, as well. And I like that, we should remain the voice of reason within this space. Lindy, I would like to hear from you. Do you think technology has come far enough to help employees to support the customer better?
I would say yes, most definitely. And I think that it's been pivotal across all industries. There is, however, a lot of different tools and applications to choose from. So it's really important to understand your actual business need and what it is that you're trying to solve. I want to echo what Marty said. She's mentioned a couple of times, but my favorite integration currently is the one Talviva did into our CRM system. As soon as we receive a call from a customer, their profile pops up in front of the agent. We know exactly who they are, what their last query was, what their setup is, and it just changes the way that engagement starts. They don't have to keep repeating things. We know exactly what's going on, and it's made a huge difference into how we service our customers and how quickly we can get going on their need and their requirement.
Absolutely. And I think it really just elevates that level of a personalized service to customers, knowing
Absolutely.
the identity, context and history of those interactions. And how would you say, how useful has automation been to you, and how do you manage the balance between humans and machines?
This is really a big one. Automation is hugely critical in our environment. For those that know our business and our history, we've been through a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and the business grew very quickly. If you don't have automation, you can't scale. You can't join different businesses. So we rely on automation quite heavily as an organization. The ongoing discussions regarding bot versus human is forever ongoing, and it will be. Currently, my view is the biggest challenge on bots is a lot of the bots run on if statements. So if you've got a general query, something that's asked frequently, you're fortunate, and the chances that your question will be resolved is quite, you'll get an answer quite quickly. If you've got something out of the ordinary, you'll probably go around in circles for a while with this bot, get very frustrated until you eventually end up with a human that can hopefully solve your query. We're busy working on a project internally where we've actually plugged ChatGPT into our knowledge base, into our training manuals, and into our system, running queries from there. You get a lot more personalized answers, very accurate, and it actually is working really well. So this is something we're looking at launching early next year to support customer service and the teams, and on the website for merchants just needing to know more. So yeah, watch the space. I'm really hoping that we can find a solution there, because obviously, I mean, going the bot route, it does speed things up a bit. But we always, for today, the human element is really important still.
Yes, and I think this is really an exciting space. Michelle, is there any advice you can give when it comes to automation, humans and machines?
I recently did a project where we used a concept called job maps. So a job map is a framework that deconstructs the job that the customer or the user needs to do in a specific step. And what the job map does is we did it from a future lens. So when we started thinking of the jobs in terms of a future lens, and we started incorporated all these things around AI and all of that, it really helped us think, because now you can start writing a job that you never had because you can use AI. So for instance, we said we want digitally assisted translations of maybe an application form. So when you start applying that thinking in a job map, you can quickly end up with 300 jobs where you just had 2 in the or 20 in the past. And it can also help you apply the other lens, the human lens. So when you do a job at that functional or at that how level, that's where you can start getting into the details. So for me, that is a very good practice when you do that job levels at that lowest level, and then start bringing that thinking into your job so that you can start identify future jobs that you've never had before.
I like that. And Marty, just touching back again on the interoperability aspect, how does interoperability influence the overall digital transformation journey of an organization? And how would you say it could enhance collaboration, especially in the context of remote work and distributed teams that we still have very much of today?
Yes, I think as remote work becomes, almost the norm, interoperability, plays a pivotal role to ensure that teams are remaining, connected and proactive. Interoperable systems allow for employees to really have an access, to shared resources. We're able to then collaborate on projects together. We are able to communicate seamlessly regardless of the, your location and or your device. If we look at, project management software and communication platforms, if everything is stored harmoniously together, irrespective of, where the team sits, creating this digital or cohesive workspace, technology helps us, just bridge that gap. Specifically, interoperability ensures that, the distributed teams really can, work as effectively, where they are, as if they were sitting in the same location, really.
And I mean, it's not just a technical requirement, but it is a strategic enabler in the bigger picture of this journey of the customer. Lindy, I would like to hear from you. What has been your biggest learning experience to date on customer service teams?
That would definitely be for everyone to speak the same language. Do you understand what is a void versus a refund? Often in an environment that's growing and you're doing a lot of hiring, the quickest way to train team members up is peer-to-peer training, practical training, and there you go. But you never have a measure of the quality of your team. You're only as good as what you've been exposed to. And if someone heard something wrong along the line, they're going to pass that on to someone else. So what I've implemented was a level training program within the company. And that is literally, you can train your junior, medium, senior, more technical team members so you know what they can handle, what you can give to them. But you can also measure their knowledge by doing tests and then just know what the quality of each team is. We use Genie as a QA system as well. It's really beneficial to identify whether or not there's a business process gap or whether it's a knowledge and training gap. And that's something we also apply within the team so that we can create a standard and that we know it doesn't matter who our customers speak to, they're going to get the same response regardless. Yeah, so I would definitely say that ensure that you can measure your standard in terms of the team.
Yes, that's a very, very practical tip. And I think on that, shifting to a more practical side, Michelle, what would you say are some of the common pitfalls customers should be aware of when embarking on their customer experience journey?
I think it's the feeling that everyone thinks that the customer experience team are unicorns and that we're magically going to come and use our wands and then we're just going to improve the customer experience or change the customer experience. But the reality is it doesn't work like that. The reality is that we are really good facilitators. We facilitate meaningful conversations with the organization who's got all the knowledge, all the experience. We have a framework that we apply. We have tools that we use so that we help them to continuously focus on who we're designing for, bring in the empathy. But at the end of the day, it's the business responsibility to create at a very macro level. Yes, we can do some work and we can say at a very macro level, this is our vision, but that's normally just a statement. It's when you go down into your micro journeys and the blueprints, those conversations with the team, with the business. So it's really the business that creates it and must own the macro, the micro levels, and we just facilitate the conversation. So we just need to be brilliant at facilitating those conversations, allowing the room, creating the room. I always say I allow a level of conflict in conversations because that's good. It's good conflict. We need to have those conversations so that we can all get to that aha moment. So I really just want to highlight that it's not us that can define, or your CX team that can ultimately define that. It needs to be a collective co-creation experience with the business. They need to own it. We facilitate.
I like that. Martie, what challenges might businesses face when trying to enhance interoperability, and how can these be overcome?
I think, Clarina, I think when we're enhancing interoperability, it presents a lot of challenges. Like legacy systems. There's a lot of times, systems that are just not compatible. To leveraging interoperability. And then, like Michelle also says, that resistance to change. So, that customer buying within the organization is completely crucial. And then, potential data silos is also another, dimension. If your data isn't really talking to one another, it's almost the Achilles heel, I want to say, of that enablement portion. And then, I think collaboration with, experienced technical partners, and continuous monitoring and feedback loops are also very much essential for success.
And then lastly, Lindy, as we're heading into peak shopping season, what is your advice for customers and for customer experience?
Clara, we've got 2 weeks to go till Black Friday. And for those online, it's a it's a big day in the year. Communication is vital and critical. Think back to the basics. What is your customer expectation? Don't be scared to communicate that there might be delayed in delivery. It might take longer than usual due to volumes. If a customer knows what to expect, they'll accept it. They're a lot more tolerant. There's nothing worse than expecting your delivery the next day and it's taking 2 weeks. Then unfortunately it results into chargebacks, refunds, which could negatively impact your business. So use this time to just advertise social media, your website, and just make it very clear for the customer what their expectations can be during the season. If you're closing and you're running on less staff, what does that impact to the business? If we understand the expectation, then we're all good.
Thanks, Lindy. We've briefly lost Michelle, but she'll probably join now. So I think now we'll have a look at a few of the questions from our audience. I'm just looking at the chat channel. And the one question that we have so far is, can we talk about the pause or waiting music or refined messages and marketing needs related to any delays of call transfers or hold moments as a professional service matter? Martie, is that something you would like to answer?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things in the of how technology is enabling a lot of those things. No one likes to sit in a queue and wait and hear that your caller number 57, and for you to be you get pushed up the rank, and now you're no longer 57, you're now number 2, and then all of a sudden you're kind of pushed, you kind of or drop the call or something happens, but the technologies, I think, has come such a long way, Clara, that you're able to give people the option now to say, we'll give you a call back. You don't have to wait. You don't have to listen to convoluted long sales messages or marketing material if I don't want to. I think that's the thing with CX is enabling customers or allowing them to have the option to really choose to say, what, give me the option to either give me a call back or, and give me, I want to be back in the queue where I was. I don't want to be number 59 when you give me a call back again, but I don't want to listen, just give me a call back and I want to talk to a human, or, give me another channel. I think that's, probably one of the biggest things where we're seeing a lot of shift in the market is enabling people just to have the option to choose.
Like that. Lindsay, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's spot on. And I've recently had an experience where it took a whole week to get hold of the bank. And every time you wait on a call, you have to leave because you need to go to a meeting. Then you have to phone back 5 days later. You still haven't had your query resolved just because you're on hold for so long. So that callback feature is absolutely magic. And it's also for the teams that so much love call avoidance, not answering the calls. It's a great way of managing your team as well, because they're automatically connected to the customer and they have to speak to them.
Thanks for that. And then we've got another question. Is there any data to support whether robo campaigns or IVR dialers are effective or not? Or what effect it has on a brand? Is there anyone in our panel who would like to tackle this question?
Apologies. Being on the farm, that's why I wanted to set the scene. We just had a power failure. So apologies. What was the question? Sorry, maybe I can pick it up.
So our question from the audience is there any data to support whether robo campaigns or IVR dialers are effective or not? Or what effect it has on a brand?
Unfortunately, not that I'm aware of in terms of actual research.
Yeah, I think if we look at there are variations within that segment, right? So we can You can have your typical robocalling dimensions and you can measure those things. But I think the last thing you want to become is that, when we talk about specifically brand damage, is you don't want these continuous dialers, and you always want to become like a spammy type of environment, right? Because that's the other thing with these robo type of dialers is it does have some portion of a negative effect on a brand. But yeah, I think there's lots of data in the market and I think it was Will that we can share with you just on what is good practice and bad practice and just the data that supports that for you.
Thanks, Marty. And then our last question before we wrap up the webinar. How can we best bridge the gap between measuring and monitoring staff who work at home and in the office, and, for example, have the same call quality, etc.? So I think it's just the question is focused on bridging the gap between measuring and monitoring staff at home and in a hybrid environment.
Maybe I can pick this one up just from experience. I'm not sure what kind of measuring tools or if you guys are using any tools, but our CRM system gives us really good reporting, and you can track the output of the team members, how many tickets they've actioned that day, how many calls they've taken, and then obviously QA. If your team lead or your manager is performing QA, they can actually see the quality that goes out, because sometimes you've got tickets that take longer to resolve, so you're going to do less. But if you QA the team, look at the phone calls, listen to the phone calls, you know exactly the quality of what's going on, whether home or in the office.
Perfect. Thanks,
I
Lindy.
think, Lindy, another maybe, sorry, just to jump in, a dimension of that is what we're seeing a lot is specifically on the voice side, if we talk about quality, the importance of really having a stable connection. And when I say connection, I physically mean your access connection, your access links. The landscape of today has improved so much. We all have access to good quality internet. But voice does, is specifically voice, and the quality of voice is impacted severely by the quality of the access link. And I think that's a dimension that a lot of people don't understand. Is you're phoning someone and then all of a sudden, like, I can't hear you, or the call quality is bad. So I think if anything, if there's a remote workforce, that stability and those users are customer, I want to say, facing users, that reliability on connectivity is so important, because that's going to really, that's where that rubber hits the road, is if you're not able to speak to your customers and you're causing more frustration, then sometimes it is just better to maybe just, be in a space where you're able to provide that your underlying support, connectivity support, or layer of support and connectivity that is stable rather than unstable in some cases.
Thanks,
Yeah, Marty, I think you're spot on there. During COVID, we had quite a lot of complaints about babies crying and dogs barking in the background, and merchants couldn't hear. So I think a headset or noise cancelling earphones is as important. But with Eskom and the load shedding, if you don't have a stable connection, it is a challenge. And for our environment, it's definitely better to work from the office, where we know the stability and everything's up all the time, and you don't have intermittent just power outages like Michelle just had. But yeah, the connectivity is very important.
But I don't have load shedding because I have solar, so there's other benefits.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our panel. We reached the end of our webinar. Thank you, audience. Thanks for taking time to attend, and thanks for asking your questions. I really hope this was insightful and that you have a bit more direction and clarity on your CX journey. But if you do not fear, get in touch with us at Alviva. We're happy to guide you on next steps. And also, if you're interested in CX coaching or require someone to facilitate you on this CX journey, we'll put you in touch with Michelle at Immersion Group as well. Right. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful
Thanks
day.
a lot.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Clara.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes.